Hey, and welcome back. Let's talk about multiplayer setups in the credit card game. Now, you will hear people refer to their player 2 or player 1. You'll see it in forums and Reddits and subreddits and Facebook groups and so on and so forth. And I know there are people who are just getting into the game not quite understanding the acronyms or exactly how a multiplayer setup can be beneficial or detrimental to your credit card journey. So I'm going to let my co-star do what she does best, and we will get right into it.
Welcome back to my dad's channel. If you're new here, make sure to click that like button and subscribe, and don't forget to share.
So the most common setup is a two-player setup. When you hear about multiplayer setups in the credit card game, it's normally two people who are together. One of them is an authorized user on the other one's card or vice versa, or they may even have the exact same card and they are working together to a common goal to accumulate points and or miles or even cash back. There are examples of that as well. So now that is the most common definition you'll hear, mainly husbands and wives and things like that. They will use that, and that is essentially what a two-player setup is. But let's get a little bit under the surface on exactly how to set one up and what kind of second player, or if you go further and have a player 3 and a player 4, sometimes you have communal families who will get the same card and really work some sincere magic. Let's dive a little deeper and see exactly how these are set up. So I feel like the first thing to ask yourself is, do you have an active or a passive player 2 and or 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Now, there are marked differences between these two, and these are, now mind you, these are things that I've come up with as how I've seen them, and really they just make sense because that's what I'm good at. It's my superpower, is making sense. So, do you have an active or a passive player 2? So, in order for us to understand that, we're going to have to define them both. So, an active player 2 has a couple of hallmarks, a couple of definitive features about them, and let's go ahead and list those. So, you have someone who actively applies for their own cards to further, your credit goals along. You have someone who is probably a significant other, girlfriend, fiance, boyfriend, fiance, husband, wife, so on and so forth. Another hallmark of an active second player is that they actively optimize the multipliers of the cards that they have. In conjunction with that, as a connection to that, 9 times out of 10, an active player 2 will be an authorized user on every single active card of the main person who is going on the credit card journey. Now, mind you, their credit card journey also can be running like concurrent with yours, but the whole thing is we're working together, multiple players, to get the game done. And another thing that an active player 2 or active, supporting team will do is that they'll actually have their own logins and or initiate payments to ensure that there is no issue with anyone's credit, because most of the time active players will understand that once you start the AU process, the authorized user process that intertwines the credit of both the main account holder and the authorized user. So if the main account holder stops paying, hurts the authorized user. If the authorized user goes crazy and starts charging stuff that the main account holder cannot afford, you see where we're going with this. So there's definitely a synergy there, and that's what you have with an active second player. Now, when you have a passive second player, they're a little different. Does it make them bad? No. Just makes them different. Now, most of the time, a passive second player will be someone like a minor child or maybe a not so close person who you may be helping out. They may be buying a trade line from you, a credit line, and that's a whole video from another day for another day. But this is someone who you maybe have made an authorized user on your card, but haven't actually given them the physical card. So that way they're a part of the setup, but they're not actively using it. Passive player twos will also not really prioritize optimization. They're just using the card, big deal, or they're constantly calling you to find out, hey, which card is this, without really nailing down the optimization process, because it's something infrequent to them, and it's not something that they really hold in terribly high esteem. Another thing with a passive player too is that they may be an authorized user on some of your accounts, but not others, because they don't want to delve too deep into the credit card game. And in addition to that, they don't actively apply for cards until led to do so. Now, the weird thing is this can also actually be a significant other or a spouse, because sometimes you'll have people together and somebody will like the benefits of the credit card game, but they just don't want to be bothered with the intricacies that come with it. So now that we have the two types of players that you can add to your account, you have to understand that there are advantages and disadvantages to both. So of course, let's start with the good news first. When you have multiple players on a single account, when you have multiple people acting in concert to the same goal, you get more spend, and more spend equals more points. So you don't even need to carry the one to figure out that more and more is more. The next thing is with more people on your account, the active multipliers that are being activated, especially if you have active player twos who really want to optimize in concert with the main account holder, once again, your average rate of earnings per dollar spend tends to go up because you're optimizing, they're optimizing. So chances are you don't want to dip past, 2% cash back or 2x points back. And most likely your active player two, who is also optimizing, will make sure that they try to get the best return as possible as well. So basically, having an active player two, the advantage, or even a passive player two who gets the optimization part right, is that your average multiple for your points will be higher per dollar spent. Even if there are times where you only get 1x, the fact is that you're sailing high for so long, you really kind of don't feel it. Now, another thing is you now have a trusted ally to hoard points with for that aspirational trip. Or actually, I heard in Anthony Ventures Live that he did with Richie, one of the users in his Discord. By the way, it was hilarious. I'm gonna try to link it here and put like a little thumbnail there, because really, you gotta watch this. He was actually talking about how him and his wife got together. They ran a plan and was able to fully finance Christmas by putting all their spend on one card and using the cash back to finance Christmas. So, like I said, you have a trusted ally with whom you can earn points with. And one of the good things, one of the advantages of a multiplayer setup is sometimes your player two or your alternate player can get cards that you yourself may be locked out of. A great example is if you're over the Chase 524 rule and your player two is not. So they can actually apply for a card, make you an authorized user. You can actually get the benefits of said card, see if you like it, see if you even want to apply for it, and vice versa. So that could work on some of the inquiry sensitive card issuers like Capital One and Citi. That could work on some of the hard and fast rules like Chase 524. So it's definitely something you want to keep in mind. These are the advantages of running a multiplayer setup. Well, at least some of them. There's obviously more. One other big advantage is if you can actually get a player 3, 4, 5, 6. That just gets crazy. Now, we've taken the good, but there's also bad. One of the disadvantages of a multiplayer setup is that your alternate player can serve to destroy your credit if they have irresponsible spending habits. If you guys don't have a plan, if you guys don't have good communication, your player two can literally sink you. Now, would it be in the best interest? No, because as your credit score goes, so does theirs, because 9 times out of 10 on an authorized user account, they take their social security number as well, and it's tied to their personal credit. So while it may not be in their best interest, if you got somebody who just wants free stuff and not be on the hook for it, they could really tank your score. Now, another thing is that the unwillingness to optimize can become burdensome, because what will end up happening is while you're trying to do the best you can, you have your player two using the platinum card to go to a nice restaurant, to get that shiny 1x because it's a pretty card, or things of that nature that really will drive credit guys like me crazy. Which brings me to the next point. where just like the advantage was, your average return per dollar is higher. When you don't focus on optimization, when you decide that you're just having cards to have cards, now your average return per dollar spent is much lower. And then in some cases, if you have a player or two who is simply not on the ball with optimization with you, but is spending like crazy, racking up multiple 1x categories that can serve to almost cut your average earnings per dollar in half. At that point, it's literally more trouble having them on the account than just doing it yourself with less spend. So those are just a few things I just wanted to go over with you. Just wanted to explain a multiplayer setup for people who are just joining the channel, just getting into the credit card game, and maybe even some people who didn't quite understand the advantages and disadvantages. Do me a favor, feel free to actually add to some of those advantages or disadvantages down in the comments. I would love to hear about it. I know I haven't said this in a long time, but I still do love the interaction. I still respond to all my comments. But yeah, tell me some stuff as far as you're concerned that has to do with an authorized user or a player 2 or a player 3 or maybe a passive player 2 you may have. So here's one for me. Well, my kids, they have credit cards. And because I know that getting them started with credit cards early, I got them as authorized users on my cards, but they don't have the cards. They don't use the cards. They've never even seen the cards, but I am building a healthy credit history for them because I am ultra responsible with my credit card payments. So that is the case of me having a couple of passive player 2s, but I'm still getting the job done. So I'd love to hear from you, and I'm not going to keep you long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the bit where I do this. You're going to look at the stuff that I have here because, I mean, come on, you're already here. And I think I gave you something good. But until next time, I'll catch you later.